turns out that he's a really great partier. So we're inviting him back, this time as our guest. And to be in conversation with him is a great dear friend of mine personally and of Personal Democracy Forum, and a great leader for free expression in the open internet. Please welcome John Perry Barlow, the co-founder of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and Edward Snowden.
The extent to which conversation between us has become easier and more casual is an incredibly good sign, especially given the fact that I think there are significant forces and well-funded forces that would rather you and I not have these conversations at all.
The big revelations of the last year is, when this started, none of us really had a full picture of what the government was doing, what they had sort of entitled themselves to do, without asking the public, without even asking the majority of Congress, instead only a few sort of shadowy committees that make decisions behind closed doors, private meetings. There's no press, there's no public advocate, because these people on the Intelligence Committee, they don't represent America, they represent the defense industry. What I would say is we've seen sort of a growing appetite for control among government institutions. And it's important to remember that this is not just an American problem, this is a global problem. This is something we're seeing around the world, where basically programs and surveillance, the way law enforcement works in the wake of these terrorist events, is they've changed the model. You know, the game has changed from where law enforcement investigates criminals, where intelligence agencies investigate specific targeted threats, to where instead of investigating criminals, they're investigating citizens. They're investigating all of us.
You and I and others of our ilk need to make increasingly frequently is that in the unique case of the United States, national security means the security of our founding principles. It's not our borders, which are, you know, extremely vaporous and difficult to define at this stage. It's not our culture, such as we have one beyond Mickey Mouse. It's not anything except those founding documents that we still profess to believe in. And if we are insecure in our beliefs and our willingness to protect and preserve those beliefs, that's a threat to national security.
When I look over the last year, you know, I had to give up a lot to do what I did. And my biggest fear was that, you know, nobody would care, nobody would talk about this. But the people in this room today, the conversation that we're having, shows how long I'm in, or how long I'm in. And, you know, I'm so thankful for that. I think it's critical because it shows the fact that we're not going to turn the page on massive systems violating the Constitution, things like that overnight. It never happens, right? Government doesn't turn the vote immediately, but the fact that we're talking about this, the fact that you are talking about this, the fact that people care, shows that we will get a better and more accountable government. You know, and wow, all I did was I returned information to public hands that never should have been kept from the public in the first place. It's up to you guys to end this conversation. And, you know, seeing this level of support just encourages me that you will.
Edward, we have your registration badge as a speaker right here.
Yeah, we thought, you know.
And so we're going to auction it off. John Perry has agreed to autograph it as soon as we're done. And Edward, when I was speaking to him earlier, has agreed that when he comes back to the United States, he'll autograph it too.
But not before.
So whoever wins, the donation for the winning of this badge will go to freesnowden.is. And we're going to do the auction on Twitter. I'll take a picture of it, I'll put it up on the feed in a minute. And it's going to run till 5 o'clock today. And the winning bid at 5 o'clock gets this badge, and you'll get a chance to meet Edward Snowden when we can welcome him back to the United States.
Is that okay with you?
Nico said that my work is practical, but maybe That was a little bit of a side statement. It kind of straddles the line between what might be practical in a few years as speculative design fiction. What we find happening, though, is that these design fictions are becoming kind of reality.
Yes, I think so.
Today's session is basically a lot of citizen science and thinking about engagement in a much deeper way than the petitions and kind of asphalt fetishism that Zainab just coined of the past, where only marches and rallies count, and going beyond things like boycotts and thinking about what does it look like when any citizen across the country can produce original science and measure the quality of their drinking water or map their community even if the government isn't.
3 or 4 youngsters, and usually 3 of them, but sometimes a 4th one, decided, watching this, they said, why don't we organize citizen journalism in Turkey so the next time that happens it doesn't depend on Serdar who's on there, and we can just have this network and everybody can report and we will make sure mass media censorship never works. There's the mass media censorship is broken again and again to the point that mass media feels like they can't censor as they did because people take to Twitter and people take to Facebook and people break the news. And this is such a common thing. I went to different purpose, I did interviews, I participated as a researcher.
It's called Practices of the Minimum Viable Utopia. And what could I possibly mean by that? Well, I spent a lot of my time thinking about the so-called smart city, this version of heavily technologized urban fabrics and urban environments that most of the large technology vendors have invested so much time, effort, and capital over the last several years trying to sell to municipalities around the planet. Sentiment that's anchored to place, and ultimately, this is seen to in many ways replace or supplant systems of governance that we've accommodated ourselves and grown used to over the last century.
Just a little lead with some semiconductive plastic in the middle, but as I bend it, the plastic conducts more electricity or is less resistant, and I can detect that. And in this case, it's just changing the color of a little LED. Very simple thing. You know, there may be an application for this.
We're just going to get it. All right, hi everybody, my name is Andrew Richey. I'm the co-founder of the Personal Democracy Forum. Thank you for coming for day 2. As you just saw, if you're in your seats when we start our plenary sessions, we'll give away a Microsoft goodie just like we just did.
Thought about keying off the night study, the night mind mapping piece to start this. And there's some amazingly useful data there, but then I also thought I'm going to stick to what I know, which is, for the most part, the federal government space. So this is the beginning of the conversation. I do not in any way attempt to speak for all of you doing such wonderful work in this space. I've just tried to kind of find my way as I've talked to others to try to explain where do we sit in the environment of civic tech, and where do others sit, and how do we relate to this project, and how do we relate to that project, and how do we all fit together? And I think we're all working really hard to try to fit together. So we know there's a lot of money in politics. Right now, this is just the number for congressional races. It costs about $3 million on average to run a congressional race. That's not news. What I think is interesting to compare, though, is how much money goes into helping Congress or any other elected official do their job once they get there.
Where should I stand? All right, I get nervous at these things, so just give me a moment. So I want to start off by saying, first, I dedicate today's presentation to the veterans who have all fought for our freedom. My grandfather died last month. He was married to his wife for 72 years. In the last decade, he took care of her. I have this inherent passion to work for our community, and I miss them dearly, and I dedicate this presentation to them and all our veterans in the audience and after high school, I dropped out of college, wandered the East Coast as an economic refugee, and I moved to New York City on the 1st of August, 2004. My first 3 years were spent working for the saddest bunch of Democrats in New York State, the state Senate. During those years, I met abused protesters, salacious roller skating parties, people building backyard jet engines, presidential campaign refugees, most of you, and people talking about this really amazing website, Personal Democracy Forum. In the Lower East Side, I met a group of radical techies who were using open source technology and radical inclusion to connect underrepresented communities to the internet. They taught me about New York City's history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, how the city's water supply became a public utility, how Central Park was designed by a bunch of amateurs, the base of the Statue of Liberty was a crowdsourced campaign. As these conversations were happening, the internet seemed to explode with its own radical social movement.